I have been able to redefine myself as a fronteriza, which is not something I always thought about, even though I live in the border, La Frontera, for decades. I really started, I think, in a more serious way, defining myself as a fronteriza when I was working in my dissertation. And I felt very close to Mexico, but I was not in Mexico. So my name is Adriana Miramontes Olivas, and I am the curator of academic programs and Latin American and Caribbean art at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art. I was born in 1985 in Chihuahua, Chihuahua, in Mexico. So growing up in Chihuahua, eventually I became aware of this idea of mobility at a very early age because my dad was moved. He moved from Chihuahua to Ciudad Juárez, La Frontera, the border, to pursue a better job opportunity. So we moved to Ciudad Juárez, which is definitely a border city. It's actually called a sister city because it is right next to El Paso, Texas. Basically, the border, you can cross it in 5 minutes, but it can also take you 1 hour or 4 hours to cross the border.
Hoy vuelvo a la frontera, otra vez he de atravesar, es el viento que me manda.
You know, my parents are both of them working professionals. My mom is a teacher, a retired teacher now, and my dad a lawyer. And they always value education. So from an early age, it was always believed that we needed to get our undergraduate degrees to have a good life. But with that, they also believe in the power of English as a second language. They understand that the more languages you know, the more doors, opportunities that can be opened. So I started commuting every day when I was about 18 years old to attend the University of Texas at El Paso. It was not a very easy thing to do because Mexico is a very machista society, and so women especially, but also just children in general, they don't leave their homes like they do here in the United States when they're 18 years old to go to college. So throughout my studies, I was crossing the border back and forth. So I would cross the border in the morning very early, sometimes 2 or 3 hours before class, so that I would give myself enough time for traffic and, you know, the actual crossing of the border. At the time, I did not know that art history was a discipline and it was a career that I could pursue. But I recall that when I was in high school, I really enjoyed making art. And so I decided to start exploring into art classes. I took printmaking, ceramics, drawing, graphic design even. And eventually, through some of my art history courses and the professors at the time at the University of Texas at El Paso, I decided that art history was going to be a good option for me, as I deeply enjoy doing research, and I just also fell in love with the discipline. For my undergraduate studies, I was doing that for about 5 years, exploring what does it mean to be an artist. And then I was able to work at the Stanley and Gerald Rubin Center for the Visual Arts. I was investigating about contemporary art, and also very importantly, something I believe in was reaching out to the other side of La Frontera. So the term fronteriza is a term associated with La Frontera, the border. You know, when I was studying in Mexico and living in Mexico, I always considered myself a Mexican. I am still a Mexican, but I am also a Latina, and I am also a fronteriza. And I think fronteriza is a better term to define me. So fronteriza basically means that you're in between. I am in between cultures. I feel comfortable mixing languages sometimes because that's what comes to mind, or because that's what's going to appeal to my audiences, or really because, again, I cannot come up with the word in either language, right? So it's either one or the other, so mixing up. So I really started adopting that term fronteriza after a conversation with a scholar at the University of Pittsburgh. When he heard my pitch for my dissertation, he said, "That's great, but you also have to consider writing about your own position here in the United States when you're talking about feminicidios and all this gender violence, in a way from a position of privilege, right? Because you're not there where the actual violence is happening." And so I was not there in Ciudad Juarez, but I was there too, because all of my family is there. I visit for personal reasons, but also for professional reasons. The goal is to see the museum as a laboratory, an alternative teaching space, a place for the exchange of ideas in non-traditional classroom. We bring thousands of students into the museum, members of the community who have never been to the museum before, and maybe this is our one good chance, right, to capture their attention and to send a message. And I think, art is intended to create dialogue. So as it is telling us something, it's also asking us to engage with each other, to raise awareness, so that in our society we can act and make change, basically. So I believe in the social function of art. It's also true that art is meant to provide joy and relief and be something beautiful to look at, as sort of like escape from the world. But also one of the most important functions of art, right, is to teach us and to show us maybe sometimes what we don't want to see or what we don't want to think about, but we must, if we believe in creating inclusive communities and advocating for social change and justice. So I say all of this because we need to advocate for women's representation in all disciplines, in the arts, in science, in the government, and in political positions. It is not an easy journey, as my story demonstrates, I think. But it's one worth fighting for.
Hoy cruzo la frontera, bajo el cielo, es el viento que me manda, bajo el cielo de acero, soy el punto negro que anda a las orillas de la suerte, a las orillas de la suerte.